For 7 years, I lived on later. Later I'd travel, later I'd date, later I'd breathe. I just needed one number first, $80,000, my down payment, my exit. I thought a small house in Phoenix, Arizona would end my family's grip quietly. Instead, the moment they smelled my savings, my mother detonated our lies in public, and the police finished the sentence. My name is Miranda. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm a project manager at a big IT company. Glass walls, badge scanners, meetings with calendars that look like war zones. I build schedules for a living because chaos was my first language, and control became my survival skill. In my family, chaos wore perfume and called it self-love. My little sister Cassidy was the golden girl. I was the steady one, which is what people call you when they've decided you're allowed to suffer as long as you don't inconvenience anyone. Mom adored Cassidy with a devotion that looked tender from a distance and felt like possession up close. Dad didn't worship anyone. He simply agreed with whatever kept the house quiet. He mastered the art of being present without being responsible. If Mom was the storm, Dad was the closed window. You could hear him, you could see him, but you couldn't get warmth from him. The normal in our house was simple. Cassidy wanted, Mom provided, and when the bill came due, Mom turned to me with that calm, expectant stare. Family helps family, she'd say, voice soft like a lullaby, eyes hard like stone. It wasn't a request. It was a tax. Cassidy collected fresh starts the way other people collected shoes. A boutique idea, a wellness thing, a brand. She always had the confidence of someone who'd never been forced to face consequences. Mom funded the fantasy. I funded the aftermath. If Cassidy's rent was late, Mom would call me crying. If Cassidy needed a car repair, Mom would call me furious. If Cassidy made a mess, Mom would hand me a mop and call it sisterhood. I learned to say yes, the way other people learned to say please. Not because I wanted to, but because refusing meant punishment. Not always loud punishment. Sometimes it was the silent kind. Mom's tight smile, Dad's blank stare, Cassidy's wounded look like I'd ruined her life by having boundaries. So I became the reasonable daughter, the adult in the room, the one who never needed anything. And when you never need anything, people forget you're human. 7 years ago, something in me finally snapped. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Just a quiet moment in my apartment when I looked at my bank account and realized I had spent my 20s financing a family that treated me like a utility. I opened a new savings account and named it Phoenix. Not the city, the bird, the thing that burns and still rises. I cut everything. I stopped buying lunch out. I stopped saying yes to every birthday trip, every weekend getaway, every impulse purchase. I drove the same car until the air conditioner coughed warm breath in summer. I watched coworkers post photos of brunch that looked like sunlight while I ate meal prep chicken in a plastic container at my desk. Every time Mom called, I'd feel my stomach clench, but I'd still answer because training runs deep. Cassidy married Elias in her late 20s. He was a quiet accountant with gentle eyes and the kind of mind that noticed patterns. He wrote down everything. He didn't drink drama like it was champagne. I liked him instantly, which should have warned me. Mom hated him for being boring, which meant hard to bend. Their marriage cracked, then collapsed, and Mom acted like she'd been the injured party. He couldn't handle a real woman, she announced loud enough for neighbors to hear. Some men are intimidated by sparkle. Cassidy smiled too brightly and kept scrolling her phone like the screen could give her stability. Elias vanished. Mom pretended it was proof she'd been right, and I kept saving. By the time my offer on a modest Phoenix house was accepted, I was days from closing. The down payment sat in my account like a door key I'd been carving for years. I let myself imagine a backyard chair, evening heat, and silence that belonged to me. I even let myself imagine a future where my phone could ring and I wouldn't flinch. Then Mom called. She didn't say hello. She went straight into panic, always convincing until you noticed it had choreography. "Miranda," she cried, breathy and urgent. "This is a disaster. Cassidy is going to jail." "Why?" I asked, already standing, pacing toward the hallway like movement could outrun bad news. "Debt," she snapped. $120,000 microloans, collectors, court. They're saying fraud. They're threatening prison. My mouth went dry. Cassidy doesn't even, how would she? "She's reckless," Mom cut in. And there it was, the familiar knife disguised as concern. You know how she is. This is what happens when someone doesn't listen. I need to talk to her, I said. No. The word cracked like a whip. Do not call her. She'll lie. She'll deny it because she can't handle responsibility. Don't make this harder. Just transfer your $80,000 to my account. I'll handle lawyers. I'll make it go away. That's my down payment, I said slowly, tasting the words like they might protect me. That money isn't yours. Bail your sister out first, Mom hissed. A house can wait. Your sister can't. A familiar heat rose in my throat, anger mixed with old guilt. Where are your savings? A pause. One heartbeat too long. They're tied up, she said quickly. Complicated. Miranda, you're the only one who can do this. There it was again. The crown of responsibility pressed onto my head like it belonged there. No, I said, and my voice sounded steadier than I felt. Silence turned to ice. Excuse me? I'm calling Cassidy, I said, and hung up before she could turn my boundary into a courtroom. My hands shook as I dialed my sister. She answered on the third ring, voice raw. Miranda? Did Mom call you too? After work, I drove to Cassidy's place without telling Mom. I expected Cassidy's usual glossy life. I found a cheap rental apartment off a busy road in Phoenix, the kind where the parking lot smells like hot asphalt and old fast food. Her door had a dent near the handle, like someone had tried to kick their way into her life. Cassidy opened it wearing sweatpants and fear. Her hair was scraped back, her eyes swollen. She looked smaller, like panic had eaten pieces of her. I didn't do it, she blurted before I even stepped inside. I didn't sign anything. They froze my account. I tried to buy groceries and my card declined, and the cashier looked at me like I was a criminal. On her counter, envelopes screamed. Final notice in red. Her phone buzzed every few minutes. She flinched every time, then forced herself not to pick up, like answering might pull her under. Mom says you did, I said. Cassidy laughed once, broken. Mom says I forgot, that I was wild. She keeps telling me I deserve it. She keeps saying, this is what happens when you don't think, like she's trying to convince me I'm guilty so I'll stop fighting. Her hands shook. Either someone did this to me, or I'm insane. I watched her tremble, and felt old resentment fight with what I was seeing, pure fear. Cassidy had always been selfish, but this wasn't selfishness. This was someone drowning while the person holding the rope insisted she deserved the water. I'll figure it out, I said, but I need you to tell me everything you remember. Any calls? Any emails? Anything that looks even slightly off? Cassidy wiped her face hard. There are emails I don't recognize, she whispered. And password reset texts at weird hours. And Mom keeps offering to handle it. Like she wants me to stop looking. That word, handle, rang in my head like a warning bell. The next day, Elias found me outside my office building in downtown Phoenix, waiting like a man who'd learned to survive storms by standing very still. I didn't leave Cassidy, he said the moment we sat in a noisy coffee shop. His hands were steady, but his eyes weren't. He slid a thick folder across the table like it weighed more than paper. Your mother forced me out, threatened my job. I stared at him. How could she force you? She called my supervisor, he said. She hinted I'd been misusing client data. She implied I'd been gambling. She laughed and said, men like you think you're safe because you're quiet. Then she told me if I didn't file, she'd make sure Cassidy believed I abandoned her. She wanted me gone, Miranda. She needed me gone. Why? I asked, though a part of me already knew the answer. Because I started asking questions, he said. About money, about where it was going, about why Cassidy's accounts didn't match what your mother said. I opened the folder. Dates, devices, IP addresses, e-signatures, transfers. The loans didn't land in Cassidy's account. They moved straight into crypto exchanges and gambling platforms, neon doorways where money disappears and hope pretends it's strategy. Elias pointed to a line. Look at the device fingerprint, same one across multiple applications. Look at the IP range, same neighborhood, same provider, and look at the timestamps. Some were filed when Cassidy was asleep, some when she was with me. She didn't do this. He lowered his voice. Your mother has a gambling problem. The words didn't feel real. My mother was the woman who mocked other people's weakness. She measured worth in appearances. She acted like control was morality. A gambler didn't fit the costume, but the evidence did. I flipped through page after page and the pattern sharpened until it cut. Loans taken out, funds routed, cash converted, losses chased. The kind of cycle that eats families quietly until it can't stay quiet anymore. Mom's favorite word echoed in my head. Family. She called me, I said, voice hollow. She wants my down payment. Elias nodded once. She's cornered. She thinks you'll save her because you always have. Report it. My stomach twisted. Reporting it meant choosing truth over the mythology I was raised in. It meant saying out loud that my mother, was capable of something criminal. Then I pictured Cassidy shaking in that apartment, doubting her own mind. And I pictured my escrow deadline. My only chance to build a life that wasn't built on someone else's emergencies. Okay, I said, we report it. At the Phoenix police station, the air smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. A detective took the folder, asked calm questions, and wrote my answers into something official. Does your mother have access to Cassidy's documents? Yes. Does she know her personal information? Yes. Has she ever handled Cassidy's mail? Yes, constantly. The detective didn't flinch. He'd heard worse. That steadiness made me feel both safer and sicker. Before we left, Elias leaned toward me. Move your money, he said, today. I called my realtor from my car and pushed the escrow deposit through immediately. She tried to reassure me with cheerful professionalism, but my voice didn't match her mood. Please, I said, today. 2 hours later, I got confirmation. Escrow deposit received. My money was no longer reachable. That night, Mom called 8 times. Then she texted, "You're choosing a house over your sister? Then, answer me. Then, don't you dare do this." I stared at the screen until my eyes burned and my hands stopped shaking. I didn't answer, not because I was brave, but because if I answered, she'd pull me back into the old script. Apologize, explain, sacrifice. The next morning, the office felt normal until it didn't. Sound thinned, heads turned, a silence spread like a stain. Mom was walking toward my desk, like she owned the place. Hair curled, lipstick perfect, handbag tight on her arm. She looked like a woman arriving for lunch, but her eyes were too bright, too sharp, like panic dressed up as confidence. She wanted witnesses. She stopped at my desk and didn't lower her voice. That money isn't yours. Bail your sister out first, she ordered. Loud enough that at least 18 coworkers froze. You think you can sit here in your little office while your sister is facing prison? What kind of daughter are you? My heart hammered so hard it made my ribs ache. For a second, I was 16 again, swallowing shame like medicine, scanning the room for an escape that didn't exist. Then, I remembered the IP logs. Cassidy's terror. The detective's calm questions. The escrow confirmation on my phone. I paused, then smiled, because sometimes the only way to survive a predator is to show it you're not prey. I would have loved to help Mom, I said evenly, standing up. But an hour ago, I transferred that money into escrow for my house. Right around the same minute, Elias delivered the IP logs to the Phoenix police, proving you took out every one of those loans in Cassidy's name. The office went dead silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to hush. Mom's face drained. Her mouth opened and closed, like the truth had stolen her oxygen. Her eyes darted, fast, calculating, searching for a lie that could fit in front of witnesses. "What did you just say?" she whispered, then snapped louder. "What did you just say?" "I said the police have evidence," I replied, "and the money is gone." Her mask cracked into something ugly. "You ungrateful little after everything I've done for you." "For me?" I asked, soft and sharp at once. "You stole Cassidy's identity. You destroyed her credit. You broke her marriage, and now you tried to take my house." That last word, house, seemed to unhinge her. She lunged toward my desk like she could grab the reality back, like she could snatch my laptop, my phone, my voice. Security stepped in, firm and fast. One guard placed himself between us, palm up. "Ma'am, you need to leave." "This is my daughter," Mom shrieked. "She's lying. She's trying to ruin me." I saw my coworkers' faces. Shock, discomfort, that polite horror people wear when they realize someone else's private life is bleeding in public. My cheeks burned. I kept my voice low anyway. "You ruined yourself," I said. "I just stopped paying for it." As they escorted her out, Mom leaned close enough to spit her last weapon into my ear. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You always come back. You always need me." I smiled again. Smaller. "No," I said. "I don't." Minutes later, my phone buzzed. "This is Officer Ramirez with Phoenix PD," a calm voice said. "We're in your building lobby. We'd like to speak with your mother." I told my manager I needed to step out. He nodded too quickly, like speaking might make it worse. Downstairs, Mom stood near the center of the lobby, clutching her purse, scanning for exits. Two officers approached with the quiet confidence of people who can't be manipulated by tone. "Ma'am," Officer Ramirez said, "we need to speak with you about identity theft and fraud." "This is family drama," Mom snapped, voice pitching into indignation. "My daughters are having a fight, that's all." "It's a criminal investigation," he said. "Come with us." She turned to me, voice turning syrup sweet. The old performance she used when she wanted my obedience. "Tell them you're confused, Miranda," she said. "Tell them you misunderstood. You're tired. You're stressed. You always get dramatic." "It's not a mistake," I said. "I saw the documents." Rage flashed across her face like a match. "You've always been cold, so smug." "Ma'am," the officer warned again and guided her forward. Mom jerked away just enough to make a scene, not enough to help herself. She knew how to suffer for an audience. When the handcuffs clicked, the sound was small and final. Mom stared at her wrists like she'd never imagined consequences could touch her. "I'm a mother," she whispered, as if motherhood were immunity. "You can explain everything at the station," Officer Ramirez said. As they led her out, Mom twisted her head back toward me, eyes burning with the kind of hatred that comes from losing control. There was no apology there. No remorse. Just disbelief that I had finally stopped being useful. The doors closed behind them, and the lobby exhaled. Cassidy called later, voice shaking. "Elias told me everything. I thought I was crazy." "You're not," I said. "You were set up." The weeks after were paperwork and pain. Cassidy began the brutal process of repairing her credit and her sense of self. The word bankruptcy hovered over her life like a storm cloud she didn't deserve. Elias stayed by her side, steady as a metronome, showing up to appointments, printing forms, making calls. Watching him love her through the wreckage made something in me ache. Not jealousy, but grief for what Mom stole from them both. Dad sent one text. "You didn't have to do this." No question, no concern, just blame wrapped in simplicity. I didn't answer. Silence was the first boundary I'd ever been allowed to keep. Closing day arrived anyway. Escrow held. Keys landed in my palm, like proof I'd earned a different future. My empty house echoed with my footsteps, and the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like air. A few evenings later, Cassidy and Elias came over with iced tea and cheap takeout. We sat in my bare backyard, folding chairs sinking into warm dirt. The Phoenix heat softened as the sky bruised purple at the edges. "I keep expecting her to call," Cassidy admitted, staring into her cup. "To tell me I owe her." "She might," I said, "but it won't change what's real." Cassidy's eyes filled. "How did we not see it?" Elias answered softly. "Because she trained you not to." Cassidy reached for my hand, tears slipping. "I'm sorry she made us enemies." "We were kids," I said. "She wrote the script. We survived it." Cassidy nodded, breathing hard, then whispered, "I don't want her in my life." "Then we don't go back," I said. "We build something else. Blood doesn't give anyone the right to steal your life. Love doesn't look like fraud. And sometimes the only way to save what's left of a family is to burn down the lie it was built on. Then choose yourself, even when your hands are still shaking."